The popular music video director Daniel Kleinman was invited to join the Bond franchise as the new watch for the title tradition. Kleinman had directed over 100 videos in the 1980s before he was approached to take over from Binder. Whereas Binder and Brownjohn shared a modernist aesthetic that was influenced by the Bauhaus school of design prevalent in the 1960s, Kleinman's design approach was eclectic. He used new technologies to create layered montages of live-action, animated and graphic elements with a narrative foundation. His background in music video direction also gave his work a tangible relationship to sound, strengthening the link between Bond sequences and their theme songs.
That I am in control.
An updated barrel sequence opened the 17th Bond film, GoldenEye, in 1995, and before the action had even begun, audiences knew that they were in for a new Bond experience. Kleinman gave the barrel sequence a CGI treatment, adding reflection and physical movement to the barrel as it tracks along with Brosnan, while still maintaining the graphic characteristics of Binder's original photograph. For the main title sequence that follows, it's apparent that Kleinman isn't interested in shocking the format, but he does add his own stamp to it. GoldenEye's typography is classic and similar in treatment to past sequences. Lighting becomes a significant constant that sets this and Kleinman's future Bond sequences apart from those of his predecessors. By default, all Binder and Brownjohn sequences assume black as their foundation, with colours being additions. Kleinman's approach is more inclusive, often treating backgrounds as sources of light rather than as voids. In GoldenEye, Kleinman's silhouettes are not graphic elements, they just happen to be in conditions that perpetually light them as such. In this case, in front of walls of fire, or the smoky graveyards of the crumbling Soviet Union. Kleinman's GoldenEye titles proved that new vision and new technology were in fact essential and healthy for the franchise.
See him move through smoke and mirrors.
To jump forward a few title sequences, Casino Royale from 2006, the 21st Bond film and Kleinman's fifth, ranks high on the list of franchise shake-ups. There was a new Bond, for starters. Pierce Brosnan was out and Daniel Craig was in. There was also a new kind of Bond. Raw, young, headstrong, without the varnish of his predecessors. Suits are an exception, not a rule. Kleinman's title flags the shake-up from the outset by creating a custom Bond barrel, challenging and modernising a long-standing motif without discarding its heritage or intent. Casino Royale was Ian Fleming's first Bond novel and his only 007 work that had not been officially adapted for the screen. The film reinvents Bond by going all the way back to his origin. Like Fleming's original character, Craig's Bond is somehow more tangible, more vulnerable and more human. He makes mistakes, he falls in love, he gets beaten up a lot, he doesn't always have a clever comeback, and his world has changed. It's grittier and more confusing and more lateral. And Kleinman taps into this new Bond energy in his sequence by eliminating anything that doesn't directly relate to Bond's character or the premise of the film. So noticeably absent are the female forms, for example, which was a staple in every Bond title sequence, regardless of their thematic relevance. In their place is a different form of intimacy, violence. Close-up, personal, consequential. It's a portrait of 007 in his current form, before the perks, before the women. As in GoldenEye, Kleinman demonstrates his talent for translating the tone and intent of the film through his unique filter, again helping to reboot the franchise with a new graphic language. But unlike his first sequence, the vernacular in Casino Royale is reserved, maintaining a uniform colour palette and stylistic thread throughout, placing Bond in a vectorised, casino-themed world in which gambling and risk parallel Bond's own trajectory as a soon-to-be 00 agent. But while Kleinman's choice of graphic motif is flat and two-dimensional, the violence itself is anything but, with Bond making short work of his opponents in choreographed action scenes on par with those of the film itself. Kleinman returned to the Bond franchise for its 23rd film, Skyfall, in 2012. While the title sequence bears many of his signatures, kaleidoscopic imagery, shadow play, shattered glass, and perhaps most noticeably the return of the female form, there's little else about the Skyfall titles that resembles Kleinman's previous work. His palette is much darker, both in tone and theme, with murky underwater vistas, sand traps, shadowy Escher-like mazes, a crumbling manor, and tombstones resembling the form of a skull, all buried deep in the mind of a dying James Bond who's falling further into his own depths.
Face it all together at Skyfall. Skyfall is where we start.
Kleinman uses key themes from the film effectively as stand-ins for Bond's own inner conflicts, pushing through haunted, surrealist landscapes with the slow tenacity of a locomotive, always in motion, never pausing for reflection.
You may have my number, you can take my name.
The sequence was realised at the VFX Post House Frame Store, with whom Kleinman had previously collaborated on GoldenEye and Tomorrow Never Dies. And the sequence is a combination of live-action photography and digital worlds and various other CGI elements, all combined in a single virtual camera move. Kleinman said it's quite a dark sequence, and he wanted to suggest Bond coming to terms with things that have happened in the past and to suggest Bond's mortality.
Face it all together at Skyfall.
Kleinman describes his intention as to set up an atmosphere that gives clues and hints, but it's not too specific. And it's perhaps this intention, this art of the tease, a threshold between ambiguity and revelation, light and dark, good and evil, kitsch and culture, that's common to all Bond title sequences, regardless of their subject matter or means of execution.
Put your hand in my hand and we'll stay.
The title sequences are an invitation to join 007 on his own personal quest. The delivery has been channeled through different artistic and thematic visions, but this core function has remained intact, woven into the larger fabric of the James Bond mythos. And as savvy and relevant as the franchise has proven to be, so too will its title sequences continue to set the tone for each new film, while blazing their own trail through the lexicon of title sequence design.